welcome. You're watching WION Climate Tracker with me, Modi Gambhir. A quick look first at what's lined up for you. China is grappling with extreme weather. Northern China is being battered by floods and southern China is facing a heat wave. The heat is causing the country to reel under the effects of a drought. It is experiencing its worst heat wave on record, in fact. Temperature records have been broken in several cities. China's National Climate Center predicting the high temperatures will last until the 26th of August. Asia's largest river, the Yangtze, is drying up. Water levels at the Three Gorges Dam at 40% lower than for the same period over the last 4 years. However, it will be releasing 500 million cubic meters of water over the next 10 days to boost water supplies downstream. Local Chinese media reporting that over 11,000 people are having trouble accessing drinking water and that over 141,000 hectares of crops damaged due to the water shortage. China is the world's largest producer of rice, wheat and potatoes. Both drought and the floods affecting food production across the country. As the world struggles with a grain shortage due to the Russia-Ukraine war, China's water shortage is affecting its economy in multiple ways. The Yangtze River Basin area generates 1/3 of China's GDP. Shanghai, China's economic powerhouse, also lies along the Yangtze. Cities in the basin are dependent on hydroelectric power. The drought is reducing power production and leading to an energy crisis. Industries in the Sichuan province's capital have been forced to shut down from the 15th of August till the 20th, and this includes major firms like Toyota and chipmaker Foxconn. Now, the authorities have started cutting the power supply to malls and residential buildings as well. The heat has both hampered power generation and also increased demand. China has told the government offices to keep air conditioners at 26 degrees Celsius and stop operating elevators for the first 3 floors of buildings. As the drought affects southern China, floods cause havoc in the north. Torrential rainfall causing people and vehicles to be swept away in Shanxi province last week. Rains have also caused landslides in China's mountainous regions. In July, China's inflation rose to a 2-year high and led to China's central bank cutting interest rates. Food prices are expected to go up further due to the weather's impact on agriculture. China expects extreme weather to become a common occurrence and that it will regularly take a toll on the economy. Moving on for now, United States President Joe Biden has signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law, an ambitious measure to tackle inflation, healthcare and climate change. President Biden sat in the state dining room of the White House for the bill signing ceremony. He praised the legislation as among the most significant measures in the history of the country.
With this law, the American people won and the special interests lost. The American people won and the special interests lost.
President Biden ticked off a list of provisions that would accelerate the country's clean energy push. The package aims to make sweeping changes to major parts of the American economy, from investing roughly $370 billion in climate and energy initiatives to imposing a new minimum tax on large corporations. It will also help electric utilities switch to lower emission sources of energy and encourage Americans to buy electric vehicles through tax credits. Biden claims that the new legislation will help cut greenhouse gas emissions by an estimated 40% by 2030. Close to the promised goal of cutting emissions, at least 50% over that time period, the bill has been touted as America's largest ever investment in combating climate change.
This bill is the biggest step forward on climate ever. And it's going to allow us to boldly take additional steps toward meeting all of my climate goals, the ones we set out when we ran. It includes ensuring that we create clean energy opportunities in frontline and fence-line communities that have been smothered by the legacy of pollution, and fight environmental injustice that's been going on for so long.
The rush to build wind farms to combat climate change is colliding with the preservation of one of the U.S. West's most spectacular predators, the golden eagle. The species teeters on the edge of decline. Our next report, getting you the complete story. Take a look.
Wyoming is home to the golden eagles that soar on 7-foot wings and a favored location for wind farms. As wind turbines proliferate, scientists say deaths from collisions could drive down golden eagle numbers, considered stable at best and likely to drop in some areas. Yet climate change looms as a potentially greater threat. The National Audubon Society says rising temperatures are projected to reduce golden eagle breeding ranges by more than 40% later this century. That leaves golden eagles doubly vulnerable to the shifting climate and to the wind energy promoted as a solution to that warming world.
Well, I think we're faced with a race against time, and that is with climate change being so acute and how serious it seems to be, as well as trying to obtain as many renewable energy projects as possible. We still want to balance that against not losing endangered populations or threatened populations or species of special concern, like golden eagles.
Turbine blades hundreds of feet long are among myriad threats to golden eagles, which are routinely shot, poisoned by lead, hit by vehicles, and electrocuted on power lines.
Golden eagles, as they're flying toward a turbine, they don't necessarily perceive this distance, this gap between the turbine blades. And so as they're flying through and the turbine is spinning, it strikes the eagle.
Conservationists at the TETON Raptor Center are trying to study the golden eagle to understand where the decline is coming from.
Part of what we're doing as scientists is trying to understand where the decline is coming from, whether it is a reduced reproduction, increased mortality, probably both to some extent, but to identify those factors and find ways to mitigate or minimize problems with the golden eagles.
Golden eagles do not mate until about 5 years old and produce about one chick every 2 years. So adult eagle deaths have outsized impacts on the population. According to U.S. Geological Survey data, the number of wind turbines nationwide more than doubled over the past decade to almost 72,000.
As far as potential solutions goes, there probably really is no silver bullet, but there are several options that can be pursued, one of which is really looking at how eagles use the landscape, particularly before you build a wind farm. That information can then be used to site wind turbines carefully and outside of high eagle use areas.
To control the impact on eagles, federal officials want companies to obtain permits that allow them to kill some birds if deaths are offset. Companies then pay utilities to retrofit power poles so eagles can't be easily electrocuted. Every 11 poles retrofitted typically counts as an eagle death avoided. 34 permits across the United States last year authorized companies to take 170 golden eagles, meaning that many birds killed by turbines or lost through impacts on nests or habitat. The nests where conservationists are doing population studies are about 96 kilometers from the nearest farm. Personnel on site scan the skies with binoculars for eagles and can shut down turbines when they approach.
One thing that I think is very encouraging is that the energy companies, these wind energy companies, many of them are working very closely with scientists to look at ways to minimize any problems with wildlife, not just golden eagles, but wildlife in general, and mitigate where they can, mitigate losses.
Federal officials have tried to curb turbine deaths while avoiding any slowdown in the growth of wind power as an alternative to carbon-emitting fossil fuels, a key piece of President Joe Biden's climate agenda. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The Columbia River has sustained indigenous people for millennia through the harvesting of salmon, roots and berries, which are used in ceremonies and rituals. But today, dams, climate change and population growth threaten this way of life. Take a look.
For thousands of years, native tribes have relied on Columbia River for its salmon and trout, and the surrounding areas for edible roots and medicinal herbs. They believe the river and its resources have been placed there by the Creator to sustain them and to protect the earth.
Our prayers and everything and our understanding of all this, it's helped the river to maintain a spiritual identity.
The acts of gathering those foods are linked to tribes' religious practices, including rituals and ceremonies performed in the longhouse. One of those rituals is for what are called the first foods, salmon, roots and berries. Each year, community members are required to wait for that first feast, to honor each food before they head out to harvest it.
We take part in service year after year for each of those foods to honor and take our first bite, to be recognized under God as we are following His law.
The salmon are the first to appear in the spring and have been caught by men and women for generations. But this way of life along the river is under threat.
As river people, we see what's happening in our area, the increased population, the expansion of cities and rural areas, and progress in general. And the consequences are, on the backs of the environment and the tribe's resources.
With warming temperatures linked to climate change, 4 major hydroelectric dams and industrial pollution, the salmon are endangered and the increasingly warm water is becoming contaminated.
That water is our life. Our people have done this for lots and lots of years. When you go out, you take your fishing line, you cast it out, and you catch a fish. Oh man, you feel really good fighting and everything.
With this deep-rooted connection to the river, there's also a duty to protect it for future generations.
And we have to remember that as human beings, we weren't the first ones here on this land. In our spiritual way of being, we're taught that, the animals and the fish and the birds, the mountains, the water, they were all here. And so what we do is really a gift to all of us to support one another, but also to support the river as well, the water, the fish, the deer, the roots, everything that's in the ground, just Mother Earth in general. So that's our responsibility that we have.
Some fear, if it is not preserved, they risk losing not only the foods that the river helps supply, but also their spiritual identity. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
After facing a historic drought that left the rugged Mediterranean hills parched and just a day after fierce rainstorms, France is bracing for flash floods threatening much of the southern region. Alert levels remain in effect for 5 southern departments which have been hit by storms overnight. The metro stations in Paris have been heavily flooded. Social media videos showing Victor Hugo metro station flooded with the water running down platforms as passengers walk downstairs. The RATP transport organization saying that several metro stations in the city have been inundated with water. No injuries have been reported yet, but public transport has been disrupted, including in Paris. The French Met Office has reported that the rainstorms dumped some 2 to 4 centimeters of water in less than 1 hour, which is equivalent to 1 month's worth of rainfall in the country. French Weather Service is reporting that the level of the river Seine has risen by 35 centimeters. The Paris Fire Service issued warnings instructing the residents to stay indoors. With the ground hardened by this summer's extreme drought, July was the driest month recorded since 1961, which is why much of the rainfall could not be absorbed by the soil and instead overflowed into streams and roads. One part of Europe is being battered by thunderstorms and flash floods. Neighboring Spain is witnessing wildfires like never before. On your screen are the 2 fires burning in the Valencia region. This is the Castellón region in northeastern Spain. A train partially came into the grip of a forest fire. As many as 20 passengers have suffered burns. 3 of them are in a serious condition. The train was stopped midway when the driver thought it was dangerous to proceed with the journey. But before he could reverse the vehicle, some passengers panicked and jumped out of the train. They were almost immediately engulfed by the fire. Those seriously injured were evacuated by a helicopter, while others, including a 10-year-old girl, were taken to a nearby hospital. Let's now go across to Spain's WILDFIRE region, where 2 powerful blazes have remained out of control. About 1,500 people from 11 villages have been evacuated so far, and authorities have warned that more people might be asked to evacuate. Humidity in the atmosphere has increased during the night, and changing winds have made the situation unpredictable. The fire started 3 days ago, and since then has been sparked by a lightning bolt. It has swept through 10,000 hectares, making it the worst wildfire Valencia has witnessed this summer.
We wanted to take a few things, but of course everything was so alarming that we did not know what to do. Things are a little more relaxed, so we returned to pick up things.
I think it's best to exercise caution because everything is so dry, you just need a spark and it will all kick off. That I understand perfectly well.
The situation is similar, if not worse, in neighboring Portugal. The map on your screen showing the raging wildfire in the central part of the country. A huge wildfire raged throughout the night and into its 7th day. More than 1,600 firefighters backed by 9 aircraft are tackling the blaze. It has destroyed about 15% of Portugal's national park. The fire has spread to several neighboring councils, burning around 15,000 hectares overall. Wildfires have broken out across Europe this summer. The successive record heat waves have baked the continent and renewed the focus on climate change, with human-caused climate change triggering droughts. The UN saying the number of extreme wildfires is expected to increase 30% within the next 28 years. The forest blaze in Portugal is the biggest fire in the country this summer. Since the beginning of the year, some 81,000 hectares going up in smoke. The fires are not just impacting the country, the effects are being felt some 400 kilometers away in Madrid. Our next report telling you how.
We feel it. In fact, we were walking down Gran Via and were wondering what was it due to. You can even smell it. To be honest, we don't know what has happened.
We felt the smoke a bit. We come from Madrid's cable car, and from there you can see all the city covered in what we think is smog, very polluted.
Lakes and rivers across Europe have been facing the wrath of drought, sometimes spewing hidden treasure and other times unmasking centuries-old villages. Italy's largest lake, Garda, has a similar story to tell. Our next report telling you more.
Compared to the past, this year there's much less water, so you can see the stones. In the past, sometimes the water practically submerged the stones, and sometimes you had to put your rucksack over your head to walk because the water sometimes even reached your waist. So sometimes you couldn't even get through, whereas now there are 20 to 25 meters of stones uncovered, and that's quite a sensational thing. It hasn't happened for years. At least in the years I've been here, I have never seen such a spectacle. I'm concerned because I think it'll take at least a couple of years to return to normal after this year's situation. In my opinion, it would have to rain more than abundantly for a couple of years in order to solve the situation.
On to some good news now from the United Kingdom. An endangered red panda cub was born at the Paradise Wildlife Park just 1 month after its father passed away. And the zoo has named it Little Red. The bushy-tailed and brown-furred bamboo munchers dwell in high-altitude Asian forests, and their population is estimated somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000. But the species has declined by as much as 50% in the past 20 years. We're leaving you with these visuals from the zoo. Thanks very much for watching.